Hello, hello, and welcome. So, as you know, I'm going live daily inside the Magnetic Woman Soiree on Facebook. Most of these lives are also going on Instagram, and some of them I'm recording to put on the podcast because this content is so good. So, today's topic is entitled The Great Mother Wound. Now, this is inspired by a book that I just started reading called Mother Hunger, which is fascinating and really confirms so much of what I do with clients, have done with clients, what I talk about and teach when it comes to a woman wanting to be the fullest expression of themselves. So I think it's really important to say with this topic, especially anything that I say really is under the guise of truly believing and knowing that our mothers, grandmothers, women in past generations really did the best that they could with the tools and the information that they had at that time. So, this is a topic that I've, thought about and talked about with high level clients for years now. And I call it the great mother wound because while in psychology and like relational theories and stuff, there's a lot around the mother wound, like the biological mother wound, the wounding that we experience from or through our mothers. To me, I think it can be really extrapolated out to also the deep wounding that we have around our feminine because we've been cut off from the great mother or the divine feminine, right? Now, in the book, Mother Hunger, which is a great read, if you're interested in diving more into this topic, I would highly recommend it. She outlines three ways that women have traditionally been starving for connection from their mother. So it's with nurturing, protection, and guidance. And I think the same can be said for our connection to the divine feminine. Now, in my work with women, especially with really powerful, strong, successful women, female leaders, what I see again and again and again is an inability to truly see ourselves, an inability to truly like honor your brilliance, an inability to allow yourself to receive everything that you want. And that typically stems from our mothers, grandmothers, women in our lives growing up as our models, as our quote unquote guidance, not being able to see themselves. So we encoded within our brains and within our nervous systems the idea, the reality that a woman does not see herself, right? And when I think back to like my coming of age, like in I was born in 1987, so yes, I'm 35 years old. And you think about like the movies and the shows that you watch that kind of like shaped your perspective, the rom-coms of the early 2000s, right? When I was like 13, 14, 15, the main story, right? Premise was like this girl who had no confidence, could not see herself until a man, the love interest, the jock, the popular guy, saw her, but it took him so long. And then only within him seeing her could she start to see herself. And I think a lot of successful and powerful women perpetuate this story. We're waiting for others. I was interviewed on a podcast episode last week for a former client of mine, and we were talking about the power of the feminine and the power of feminine desires and how it truly is what leads, right? And she was like, she would have a big desire and take it to her husband, and he was like, "Oh, I don't want that." And she asked me like, "What do you do?" And it's like we're taught as women that what we want, our ability to see ourselves, our confidence, our sensuality, our sexiness has to be approved of and or greenlit by somebody else in order to make it right. And so what I see a lot playing out with leaders is you have this great mother wound. So you have wounding around your own biological mother. And again, this does not make them a bad person or wrong. They more than likely did the best that they could with the information, the tools, and with everything that they had. So you have this like wounding around your mother. And it could be, again, the fact that because she couldn't fully see herself, you struggle to see yourself. It could be that because she kept her sexiness and sexuality in the shadows and was ashamed of it, you learn that that's what it meant to be a woman. So we have that, and then like the embodied mother wound, and then we have the divine mother wound, which is for the last 3,500 years, 2000, especially 2500, there's been this shift and then solidifying of the patriarchal religious way of spirituality, meaning that there's one God and it's male. And it comes with a lot of wounded masculine qualities like violence and rage. And I think as a whole, humanity and society is really craving and starving for this like nurturing protection and guidance from the divine feminine, which is why in the last 3 to 5 years there's been this huge like resurgence of the goddess movement. And again, to me, everything that I do and teach and everything that I think is really important for us as women and especially as leaders is the merging of the embodied and the spiritual. It is this intersection of the sexual and the divine, the sensual and the sacred, right? And just like with anything else, when we go too far in one direction in the pendulum, like we're really missing out on the gifts and the beauty. And so for me, I truly believe that for female leaders, the best work that you can be doing for yourself right now is healing, embracing, and celebrating your sexuality, your sexual power, your erotic essence, your sensuality, pleasure, however you want to frame it. It's doing that work. And within that, there's a lot of deep shadow work because female sexuality has been relegated to the shadow. And inevitably, there is mother wound work because we were shown or taught what it means to be a woman through how our mother navigated the world and then through not having a divine feminine element that we could connect to. And so for me, in doing mother wound work, mother healing work for women, it's both. It's healing the part of ourselves that didn't get the nurturing, the protection, the guidance from our mother because they probably couldn't. And it's healing the part of ourselves that didn't get the nurturing, protection, and guidance from that like divine spiritual element of the feminine, right? And again, to me, that is always under the umbrella of healing, embracing, and celebrating your sensuality and your sexuality because we live in the patriarchy that teaches us a woman is either Madonna or whore. She's either good and virginal or bad morally and sexual, right? I keep saying that like the best marketing the patriarchy ever did to disconnect women from their power was to connect female sexuality and morality, right? And that connection of being like, you have to be devoid of your erotic essence in order to be good morally keeps women on this tightrope of constantly striving for quote unquote goodness, but never arriving because the standards and framework that were set to be a quote good woman in the patriarchy are impossible and cut you off from your full expression. So to me, one of the ways that I see mother wounding show up for female leaders is, again, you're not fully able to see yourself, own your brilliance, own your genius. I also see it really showing up in the gaps in your leadership, especially when it comes to people pleasing. It I see it showing up in the settling for and the shorting of our desires, because if we dig deep enough, there's some kind of vow of loyalty to our mothers to not be way happier than them or to do way better than them. And again, if you would talk to any mother, I'm not a mother, but if you would talk to any mother and you said to them, like, oh, this is what I'm noticing in myself with my mother, they would say, as a mother, all I want is for my kids to be better, to do better, to have more than me. But as little girls, we learn that it is safe and we receive love when our mother feels good about herself, obviously, right? And because children are naturally narcissistic, as in we think that everything that's happening around us is because of us. It's like, oh, if I shrink down or don't outshine my mom or don't ask for too much, don't emote too much, she's happier. Whether or not those two things are correlated, and sometimes it doesn't matter, in our brains, we correlate them. And we think, like, well, I will continue to make my mother happy. She'll feel good about herself. She'll feel fulfilled if I shrink down, if I need her, if I am also kind of unhappy. And I hear this with clients a lot, women who want to expand and grow and like really take up even more space in the world, and they're afraid of it damaging their relationship with their mother, because when they're with their mom, they're usually complaining together or talking about how things are hard or difficult or a struggle. And so when it comes to healing the mother wound within us, again, it is twofold. It's healing the embodied mother wound, like, and really learning how to give that nurturing protection and guidance to yourself, and healing it within the confines of feminine spirituality, as in a connection to the divine that is inclusive of feminine qualities and or the divine feminine goddess archetype. Like, and when I say feminine qualities, what I truly mean is like unconditional love and acceptance, like a deep and profound sense of nurturing, a sense of being really held fully as you are, protection from the patriarchy and patriarchal values that are deeply damaging and toxic to women. You know, I think one of the biggest things that we're also seeing kind of across the spectrum here is we've heard a lot about or seen about the great resignation, all of these people leaving the workforce. And I think for a lot of women, I've even seen this in the online space, there's been this massive recognition that hustle culture and the like patriarchal value system not only like just doesn't feel good, it is toxic to us and our systems. I just had a call this morning with a very dear friend of mine, and about like body stuff, body image stuff, stuff I'm kind of like confronting, or not even confronting, but has been coming up for me recently, that of course I've been working through. I use my tools, I use the magnetic woman tools. Um, and I was just feeling a desire to really feel like kind of seen and witnessed and held in some of the things that were coming up for me. So I reached out to a very dear friend of mine who this is her life's work. And I was saying to her that I was noticing this like outdated, but still very much there voice and tendency of like, be the smallest version of yourself as a woman, deprive, you know, go really hard at working out. And when I tune into my body and I think about doing that, my body is like, no. It is like a full no. And when I tune into my body and ask it, what does it need in terms of movement or nourishment? It's about slowness. It's about softness. It's about true nourishment. And I think that we're seeing this a lot too on like TikTok. If you follow like fitness people or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, I was, you know, intermittent fasting all the time and like following this biohacking stuff and whatever, which, mind you, the majority of that science has been for and about the male bodies and not about the female bodies. And finally saying, like, yeah, I was intermittent fasting every single day and I, lost my hair, lost my period, lost this, lost that. Like, the patriarchal order is not just like doesn't feel good, it is toxic for women. And you have to understand that I think so much of this is coming up right now because we are carrying backpacks of 3,500 years of patriarchal baggage, and literally no more of it can fit. Like, we're, as like a culture and society, we've reached a breaking point, and so many women have reached a breaking point in being like, I can no longer subscribe to the patriarchal belief system and thinking that that is how I'm going to run my life. It doesn't feel good. It's toxic. It's debilitating. It causes so many health issues for women. And so, one of the things that we're doing inside of Sovereign at the very beginning of the program is really deep mother wound healing, really deep in the biological sense, embodied sense, and in the divine sense. Because when we heal those relationships, when we learn how to mother ourselves and how to have a deep and profound connection with the divine feminine and or feminine elements of the divine, it truly shifts how we're able to show up in the world, how we're able to relate, how we're able to lead, how we're able to hold our power and use it in the world. So if you want to join me in Sovereign and doing this deep work, reach out. Go ahead to themagneticwoman.com/sovereign. You can go ahead and fill out the application there. If you want to do this deep work and Sovereign isn't for you, there's two other ways that we can dive into this. One is you sign up for an embodied 2-day intensive experience, which is essentially equivalent to like 6 months worth of coaching in the matter of 2 days. And we'll do this really deep and profound work and healing in that element. And I've opened up one spot for 90 days of mentorship specifically around healing your mother wound. For June, July, and August, you get 2 calls with me a month. There's one spot for that. So reach out to me if you're interested in some one-on-one mentorship. And if you want to do this inside of a community, inside of a container, which I'm going to be completely honest, is such a potent and profound way to do this healing work because it also simultaneously will heal the deep sisterhood wound that is in conjunction with the mother wound. You want to go ahead and check Sovereign out. And of course, you can send me a message if you're interested and you want to see if it's right for you. Um, and if you're interested in that book that I mentioned, again, that's called Mother Hunger. But what I would really have you begin to do, if nothing else, is start to look at in what ways are you not being the fullest expression of yourself because of either a connection to your mother, trying to stay loyal to her, what you learned from her that it meant to be a woman, and just start to look at what are the stories that are playing out behind the scenes. All right, my loves, I hope you enjoyed today's live. I'll see you tomorrow.